Good morning, Walter. We're good? Okay, so
Call a meeting to order.
we're calling the meeting to order. We have a new chair.
Yay.
Okay, we got
Thank
that.
you.
So
Everybody take
Susan's here, John's here, Donna's here, Dan's here, David's here. So we're all here. And hopefully we'll be adding.
For the purpose of the recording, you
Yes.
want to say your name?
Oh, sure, I'm David Mann.
Thanks for taking this on.
You're welcome. So we're going to approve the minutes, Ann. Is that next for us? Have a motion to approve the minutes?
Do you have an agenda there?
Yes.
Just follow the agenda.
Approval of minutes is down here. Okay, so select committee secretary. We're looking for a volunteer to be the secretary for the committee to help share the burden.
I'll do minutes, but I'm not gonna do this kind of minutes.
I would
She got carried
prefer,
away, I think.
I would prefer bullet points.
Yeah, me too.
Keep it simple.
When you're the secretary, you can do the minutes how you want.
Any way you want, okay.
Thank you, John.
So for the
Doing well.
record, John, let's you pronounce your last name so we get it correct.
Gallagher.
Gauger.
Gallagher.
John Gauger will be the new secretary. And he will keep it simple. 1 page or less, is that fair?
Sounds good.
That might be hard to do.
Well, we're going to try to tighten things up. Okay, so now we're going to approve the minutes. So we need a motion to approve the minutes.
I approve.
So Dan is number 1
I second.
and Don is number 2. All right, so we got that covered. Then we
No,
have,
we have to vote.
oh, we have to vote?
On
Everybody
approval.
approves? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
okay, thank you. There will be a lot of procedural lapses with my involvement. So feel free.
And just for record, you may want to just say you're just approved that May 3rd.
Oh, so we are going to vote to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 3rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
It's unanimous. This is good. Now we're going to move on to correspondence. We had an email from Suzanne Good about crosswalks.
Yeah.
And I know from my comments in the past, and that of others, that we've talked about restriping the paver crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue going back over a year.
Oh, yeah.
And as I recall, the statement was made that the vinyl strips, or whatever the content is, wore out, were not considered to be acceptable, and were going to be replaced with highway-grade paint. Keith is nodding. So the idea there was to improve the visibility of the crosswalks because they've faded over time quite a bit.
Well, David, won't we be discussing that under new business? You just want to
I'm
have,
just, yeah,
we could take that correspondence relates to our new business.
It
So-
does.
So we could get into detail then?
yes.
Okay.
And Suzanne also recommended signage, which is something that I think we have to defer to the Merge project.
Well, I
or
don't know if
not.
you want to defer. I mean, what I would like to see is it all coordinated. So if there are things that have been, because I haven't been coming to these meetings, but if there's stuff that's come up at these meetings or things that should be in that, then before we finalize the merge plan, it'd be nice to have that input, you know? In other words, I don't want it to get too far ahead of, you know, the needs that have come out of this committee, which has been talking about it for a long time, right?
Yes. So Suzanne brings up good points we've discussed in the past. And we'll pick it up again down here in new business.
But
So,
the letter was from Susan Good, is that what you said?
yes, Suzanne Good, number 1 Grove Street.
Is that
She's,
the only, yeah, okay.
and that's the only correspondence that has come in since our last meeting.
Oh,
And when was that? When did she write?
last week or so. It's been very
Okay,
busy.
because I was trying to remember if I'd seen that one, okay.
I don't think Kathy gave me that, but I do recall reading it in detail, and there were pictures of crosswalk signs from Lewis.
Right, yes, okay, I do remember that, yes.
And as I recall, the crosswalks here, none of them are signed in the city on Rehoboth Avenue. We just have the pavers and the stripes.
Correct.
But there's talk about doing signs in the future.
Yeah.
But we can get into that later.
And then there are signs around town, like on King Charles and out on Surf. They have those signs in the middle of the road that say,
Sleeping policeman.
what?
The
Sleeping
sleeping police-
policeman, is that
They
what
don't
they
like
call those?
sleeping, or do
So
What do
there
you
are
call 'em,
those
lying
kind of
down?
signs with a crosswalk.
They're lying down a lot, cars run right over them.
Those are the ones I think I see in North Shores.
Yeah,
Yep.
there used to be one at King Charles too.
So,
When you get to the topic, I have some things on.
good. So we left off in May. We did not have a September meeting. Kathy resigned. And at this point, I'd like to recognize the 12 years of work that she put in to this committee and countless hours above and beyond. Really amazing.
Could we ask, you want to recognize that, David?
Absolutely.
Do you have a certain way you were thinking of recognizing it? Or doesn't the city do plaques or,
They don't.
I thought they did certificates or something for people who?
There's no gold watch. There's no plaque.
I was thinking of a paper certificate. I think the city does have some
They
kind
used
of.
to, but I don't think they've been using them recently.
Well, if we could have the city officially recognize Kathy and her service to the city, it would be wonderful.
Yeah,
So I've got that down here as something from where we left off, because she left off a lot. And it's gonna be hard to recapture that energy.
right,
It's
absolutely.
gonna take some time.
Yeah. How about if the city would do something and additionally, I could bring in a thank you card and we could sign at the next meeting and send to Kathy.
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I'll do that.
But since she's probably watching on video, it's not gonna be a surprise. Okay.
Let's forget about that.
It's all right. So, moving down to street improvements. There have been multiple new stop signs. One I remember specifically asking for at the end of Henlopen at Grove. And we even have a new speed cushion on Columbia. Are there any more plans for speed cushions anywhere in the city? Or is that like an experiment?
At this time, there's no new speed cushions being planned for the city. We have got some requests. What I have asked the city manager, I think we need to come up with some kind of procedure on when requests come in, does it come to your committee first? Does it go to the, where does it begin at an end? Because a lot of times the first thing when it comes to me is I say if there's crash data or speed data and things like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of times, neither necessarily say we need a stop sign or a speed cushion or whatever. So then it comes down to what happens next if a community has petitions and would really like it, where does that weigh in at? So I think we need to come up with a procedure that your committee may want to work on, or if it comes out of city manager's office or what, because we are getting more and more. I do have some people in town here have asked for additional stop signs. We just had one in Country Club Estates.
Yes.
And some have asked for speed cushions. So, and then you always have to wait because you have Public Works we try to get their input. Fire Department, we try to get their input, especially put speed cushions. The state maintained roadway, you have a legal aspect. You have to get DelDOT's approval because again, they help maintain the roadway and things. So there's a lot of work goes to it. So I think we just need an outline on how we do these things. But to answer your question, right now there's no new speed bumps or pads in the works.
So what I've made a note here, what I called sequence of events, to follow up with your flow, if a request comes in, how it moves around the city.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
How did those stop signs go in? It was just an executive decision? It just got done? Just
After-
how it was done that time? I
Yeah,
think
at
two
the
years-
last few ones, things come in, and it was, again, asked for my input on crash data and speed, but at the end of the day, as you said, the mayor was the final say.
So it's just an executive
In the city,
decision,
yes.
really?
Yes, sir.
And you're suggesting that we not do it that way?
It can be that way. We just, I think there just needs to be an outline which way we need to go, because, and that's even for the public or for the communities that bring it forward to us. And then what do we weigh it on? And that's probably going to come down to the mayor and city manager deciding how much weight do you go off if one's really not warranted as far as crash data and speed data, but the community really wants one, where's that weigh in at? Where's the balance if you go ahead and put one in or not and stuff? And then you have to look into stop signs a lot. What is the objective you're trying to reach? Stop signs really aren't made to slow traffic down or whatever. If you go and do the research and all that, that's not what their main intentions. Does it help? Absolutely. But that's not their main objective. So you have to, again, go to why and what's the real need? Is there another issue? Again, just my
Well, they just
thought
put in a
process.
stop sign on Hickman,
Yes.
and that is, certainly must be to slow things down.
It is, again, the speed data won't sit there and show that it was necessarily warranted, and definitely no crash data. When you're talking about outspeed, you want on average starting to get, 8, 10 miles over, 12 miles over the speed limit. And, when you have cars that are 26, 27 in the summertime, one after another, it may feel like they're going faster, but the reality is they're not going as fast. Now you will get one that spikes it up to 32, 33, and that skews things. But you have to go off the averages and all. But again, in some areas, all the speed limits in town are 25 miles an hour, but in some areas, let's face it, streets are narrow, and in the summertime with bicyclists, walkers, and all that, 25 is too fast. It really needs to be 15. So, then the community gets involved and say cars are flying down here and we have kids, walking or bicycling, and then it gets to be a dangerous situation. But is the vehicle violating the law? Not really. So that's where you get into balancing act, and does stop signs help with that? I'm just saying, if you do the research, the stop signs were never intended to necessarily slow traffic down. There's other devices and other enforcement measures, but it does help, yes.
Getting back to Chief Banks' original point, like, what's the procedure? Or like, when these requests are made, what is the procedure for it to get approval? And where does this committee fit in? Like, when do we have input?
Because you evaluated your own requests that have come to this group. You
Right.
evaluated and
That's
voted
how
on
we-
it as a group.
That's the way I thought it was done, is
Yeah.
they'd come through Kathy, and Kathy's last notes were, what was she was surprised she'd never heard about the right-hand turn.
I think that where Kathy evolved was she wanted no surprises. That we have a statement of responsibility, which I just got this morning, I wasn't aware of, that I'll send out to everybody. And then get Chief Banks, the mayor, city manager, and Kevin probably as
Yeah.
well.
Yes, sir.
To try to come up with a flow that we can follow, so we're in the loop, so to speak. Because things we're told we were gonna get, and I'm moving, but things we were told we were gonna get didn't happen, and things we asked for happened. Like, we did really well with the snow emergency routes. We got that accomplished. And we did get stencils on the sidewalks for walk your bike. And we did get a stop sign at the end of Henlopen Avenue at Grove. And then there are many other things that just popped up randomly. So I'd like to see all of us involved as a group,
Yeah.
as one of the people, so to speak, that's involved? And does it start with us and then flow to the city? And the city lets us know. There has to be a procedure system somewhere for all these things to happen. So that was part of what we wanted to get involved in. So let's move on to new business.
Well, could we-
Oh, Walter, go ahead, because you're gonna help me out here, Walter. I trust.
Walter Bernier, 123 Rehoboth Avenue. The chief's report was wonderful, very cohesive. And I talked about most of the things that you've talked about before here, and Kathy has said that's not in our purview. That's for the commissioners and the administration. And so therefore it wasn't allowed to be discussed. And in the case of, the chief could correct me if he wanted to, if I'm wrong, speed bump on Columbia Avenue, state-owned roadway, came as a result of one person. Several other stop signs are the result of one person. And it should have flowed through, and there is no way to get the information because you don't see what the emails and the personal conversations are, and everybody's laughing at you. They criticize the mayor on one side, and then he and or she, the sign pops up, and there's no certificate of necessity to say it's there. And once it goes up, it's not easy to take something down. But the chief's got a very good handle, and it was a very good report. We thank you for discussing it, and thank him for the information, because it needs to come through as a path that everybody's emails, et cetera, requests come through and get acted upon in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
And David, I think in this, as we're trying to lay out what the procedure might be, we might look at other committees. Are there procedures for other things? And are they a template for us? And they may be in exactly the same position, that there's none, and that streets and transportation is unique from other committees. But I
mean, I think all of them could benefit from procedures, but I don't know how many really have them. I don't think our tree group has,
so maybe we would just want to set up what makes sense for street and transportation, what procedure.
Well, that's
where we get in the, where
that's something we're going to put on our list.
for,
Of-
put on our list for.
Down here, where the list of items for future meetings and prioritize them. That
Oh.
certainly the flow and involvement of this committee is important
Yeah.
because we want to be productive, we want to be useful, we want to be helpful, and above all, to me, I want people to be safe. I would like the chief to have to do 0 accident reports and 0 near misses. But we can't get inside the brain of everyone in every car, or walking, or riding the bicycles. And so pedestrian safety, to me, if we were to look at the bodies on the street at any one time, particularly in the summer, pedestrians is the number one. That's where most of the people are, is on the sidewalk walking and trying to get across the street and trying to get back to their cars and get moving. So beyond the crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue, and those are the ones I call the paver crosswalks, for lack of a better description, and taking up the failed material and restriping them with highway grade paint that would, and again, the chief probably knows more about the types of paint, but I'm sure there's some that are reflective and have different properties that would be evaluated for use as what's appropriate.
And what I'd recommend while we're doing that and talking about this, in addition to doing those linear stripes along the crosswalks, we should also put those diagonal stripes across the brick crosswalks. Those brick crosswalks don't show up, people don't recognize them. We need to make them as obvious to tourists or drivers as possible. And though the bricks may be pretty, we need to diagonally stripe them.
Chair, may I? I mean, are you open for question? You're talking amongst yourselves.
There's part of what's nice about Rehoboth is its appeal aesthetically. So we transition from doing what's appropriate and what's recognized, and the streetscape certainly did a lot for the city in terms of its appearance. But as the chief and I have discussed, there are issues there. I'm not sure that striping the pavers would be at the top of my list.
Well, it would be,
His report.
Yeah, talk to us.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to kind of combine the pedestrian safety and the crosswalk. Last month, or maybe earlier this month, there was a workshop committee meeting that the city manager asked me to report on. I did put a PowerPoint presentation together, which I did not bring today with me, but I can discuss it. And we talked about the striping, and they're actually burning some of that reflective tape off currently if you look out front of Rehoboth Avenue in front of City Hall, and they are going to use start painting them.
They're gonna take the bricks out?
No, the bricks are going to stay there aesthetically and all that, but got a commitment from the mayor, commissioners, Public Works, Kevin Williams, about making sure we, every spring before the summer season, we repaint the striping and where it's appropriate, where it needs, and if it needs it prior, that we have to sit there and commit to that. Like at the traffic circle where it says yield, repaint. And if you notice, they've already started doing that, if you ride up to the circle today, you'll see that the white outline where it spells out yield and things, and the little triangles have been redone already. So Public Works is in the middle of doing that now, and they have committed to do that every spring too. I was asked at the workshop to talk about crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue specifically, and is there an issue with pedestrian safety at the crosswalks, or is it a perception? So, the first thing I spoke about at the workshop was what is the state law? Pedestrians right of way and crosswalks. Well, a vehicle shall yield the right of way, slowing or stopping if need be to yield to a pedestrian crossing the roadway within a crosswalk. The key word, within a crosswalk. So in other words, you can't be standing on the curb and waiting and expect a vehicle to stop. That's the state law. You must starting to make a step into the sidewalk. Not always the safest when you're talking Rehoboth Avenue and you have 2 lanes and vehicles parked. Then I looked at statistics, again, okay, do we have a problem with pedestrians at crosswalks, or is it a perception? I mean, I think we all can agree there's a lot of people that jaywalk, and I'm not sure we're ever going to stop that unless we, as a town, decide that we want to start truly enforcing it, and that's hand out citations, because I can go into a little later about the warnings and the safety things and the campaigns that we do with the Office of Highway Safety. But so I did look at statistics for 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19. And what I found out was there was in 19 so far this year, 3 pedestrian injuries, accidents. None of them involved a crosswalk. One was a parking dispute. A person was standing in the middle of their parking space, refusing to move, and a car said, "You're moving out of the way," and bumped them. Another one, individual was walking behind a vehicle, and the vehicle started to back up and did not see them behind them. Another one was a person was walking behind vehicles again on the avenue, and a person in another lane made a lane change and ran over her foot. Now, that person was driving under the influence of alcohol. That helped contribute to that, but again, it was a person, not a crosswalk issue. That was the only 3 in 19 so far. In 2018, there was no pedestrian accidents. There was a bicycle one. In 2017, there was 1 pedestrian, and that person jaywalked in front of a vehicle, ran out in front of the vehicle while the vehicle was making a U-turn on Rehoboth Avenue. Again, not utilizing a crosswalk, so it wasn't a failure of crosswalk. So then I think it was important to know the law, and do we have a problem at the crosswalks or not? And now, does that mean there's not perception? Does that mean we shouldn't do something to help improve that? And the answer is yes, we should work on some things to do. Let me just flip through my PowerPoint, some notes here that I had.
I just wanted to say, we're always gonna have jaywalking because the cars are parked in the middle. You have to get to those cars. You expect people to go up to the corner and then come down
Well,
the middle?
that's the law, so I guess, yes, that's
That
what
is
we
the law.
expect, but yes, people take the least resistance, yes. as I spoke about, was maintenance. So obviously, we are gonna, we're gonna be restriping, and we need to do that more often. And, but the one thing that we're coming on, and I'll kind of pass this to the table, is signage and lighting. We looked at, do we want the signage? Can we put silent police officers in the middle of the roadway? If you go back, I think it was a Cape Gazette article, 2018, I think, they did a study for Lewis, or Lewis was talking about adding more in the controversy because people run over them, cause damage to vehicles. Some like them, some think they look cluttery, and all that. For us, I don't think it works, talking to Public Works and my officers, because of this. We have vehicles parking on both sides. So when an emergency vehicle, ambulance, fire trucks, police, using their sirens, have to go out of town towards Route 1 or coming into town, they're riding in the middle because the cars have to try to move over as much as they can. So their vehicles are riding right down the middle to try to split to get somewhere. So again, you're going to cause damage to vehicles unless you really are going slow, because they are made to bend over. I understand that, but you're going to hear the cluttering all the way underneath the vehicle, and you have to really, really go slow. So the one thing we talked about at the workshop, and that was kind of agreed upon, that in the upcoming budget to work on, is lighting and signage. And I'll add third block, fourth block, and fifth block. And we're going to do painting everywhere, but we thought we're going to put some signage, and I'm going to kind of walk around and show you what I'm talking about. But it's a yield sign with a pedestrian crossing with an arrow showing us that it is a crosswalk at the brick pavers. And then we're going to hope to install, we're putting it in the budget. You would push a button just like at other crosswalks, and a light, LED light, would signal back and forth, a yellow and white, to sit there and know that people are waiting to cross. So I'll show that.
Again,
Third, fourth, and fifth blocks
for
of
each of
Rehoboth
those
Avenue.
would have that, a flashing pedestrian light?
Yeah, what we're looking at doing, or I'm proposing in the budget, along with Kevin Williams from the street department, is at the you put a sign, so one would be in the middle, so there's really like 4 signs across each way,
So you'd have median signs and curb
Yes.
signs.
and you'd have the LED on the same post underneath this. A good example, if you ever want to look at one, is go Bay Health in Dover, and they use it and it really works well.
And I think ultimately, if the street were to be repaved, you could even put uplights in the street.
That is what we looked
As
at
part of
too,
that.
and spoke about the uplights. Again, it gets
Yes.
into maintenance and all that. So would that be something we'd be looking at this year? Honestly, is no, because that, but if they're repave, resurface Rehoboth Avenue, that may be a time to look at something like that too.
Those work really well, and they're not intrusive aesthetically when they're not being used.
So,
Well, what about the sign on Lake Avenue, right there at that restaurant? Great big sign says Pets Crossing.
again, we were looking at and we would do this, make an attempt to do that at a third, fourth, and fifth. So that does take around Lake Avenue, because that's 4th block. So, and one other thing was talked about, and it's not going to happen in this budget, or I say it's not, it's totally not up to me, is down between 4th and 5th block. People are jaywalking a lot because they're trying to get to the restaurants, say Dogfish and other restaurants. So again, if the streetscape's ever redone, resurfaced, that might be time to add another crosswalk in. I guess it could be done prior to that, probably without the brick pavers, but that's something that I guess this committee or others, the commissioners, would decide on.
Is that the section, the median section, that does not have a crosswalk access?
Yeah,
at
right,
any
that-
point?
That's
the
correct,
problem,
yes.
Is that you can't get to the median with parking it any other way.
And
except for jaywalk.
then the other thing I would sit there and again, just want to give you a brief update, is that through Office of Highway Safety, our officers are out there, take different intersections and hand out pamphlets and trying to educate people. We thank them for the ones that are doing it correctly and waiting, and the ones that are not. We sit there and give them literature, and we sit there and ask them to, come back to the sidewalk. Sometimes they're not happy that we do that, again, But those campaigns, they're just warnings and educational. We are not giving out any citations for that. And I think in all the years we've been doing that, I think total 2 or 3 tickets have gone out, and that's they kind of sealed their own fate on some of the conversations, how they were treating the officers on trying to educate them and just asking them and littering, throwing the paper in the ground and all that. But that's rare. So we do try to get out there and educate and all that. So that's, I just want to give that quick update. I will be discussing tomorrow more at the, again, at Rehoboth Beach Homeowners Association meeting that's going on tomorrow. And if you have any questions, but that's where we're at so far. A lot of this is being planned and we're getting prices as we speak now for the upcoming budget.
Let me clarify, so we're talking about 3rd, 4th, and 5th Street, I heard. So it's 3rd, I mean, is that where the Lingo's Realty is, that intersection there, where it's at Christian Street and walking there from the south side of Rehoboth Avenue to the north? And then 4th, is that where Lake comes out? Is that where the Cultured Pearl is and?
Yeah.
But I guess what's opposite Dogfish? I'm trying to think what's on the
Grove.
So here's Lake, here's 4th, here's 5th. So we're looking from City Hall
We've got
back.
blocks now, the block, not.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to imagine, what like at 4th Street, that's where we have the Cultured Pearl and the grocery store, right?
Yes, we do. And we have Dogfish across the street and here.
Okay, and then at 5th, what's at 5th?
That's where State Road hits Rehoboth
State
Avenue.
Road.
Okay, so that's
The
that.
Arc, clear space maybe.
Okay, and then,
Again, why I looked at those spots, if you will take this Rehoboth Avenue where you're crossing that right from the start at the bandstand. When you come from the bandstand, people are really slow. There's a crosswalk there, and people are in front of bathrooms and already pretty much slowing down as they're going into that area because they're going around. And when you come out, there's a sign about yielding already to merge back westbound on Rehoboth Avenue because there's 2 lanes. So you're kind of slowing into that, and we've had no issues there at all. First and second block are controlled intersections. They've already have lights and crosswalks. Now, yes, we are talking about refreshing the paint, as we've already discussed, so that will be done. At 3rd Street, right here across City Hall, going across to the Summer House, again, it's refreshing the paint, and we're talking about putting in the budget those signage and LED lights. So I think that will be a big help. That's why we focused on that. And then again with 4th and 5th block. The next one comes up to the traffic circle. There's a lot of signage. There's red yield signs that flash. There's paint that's right in the roadway says yield and all. So there's not a lot more signage. Again, later on if they repave, we might talk about putting arrows in the ground and all, but how much signage can you see before it gets too much? It's a small circle anyway, and your mind can't capture it all. You need to be looking where traffic
I guess my concern
is.
is why I raised this, of all the places, I would not, when talking about pedestrian safety, I would not have thought about these 3 areas, at least 4th and 5th, I think the worst pedestrian area with the greatest risk is at the circle itself. And I think it's there that we really want to focus on and improving pedestrian safety there.
Is that part of the 5th block, or is that?
The circle is not, again, I'm not the mayor commissioners, I'm not on the committee here, but what I will get into is I did bring Del Dot out this summer, even met Miss Good out there. The traffic circle, again, is not, there's no crash data there. We've had very few accidents and all that. Are people waiting and all that, and you can't see it across? One thing I didn't mention is how serious do we want to be? We love green space here in Rehoboth Beach, But at any crosswalks, the reality is you you have to be able to see people standing there at a crosswalk and go. And down in that area, you have coming into town, you have rose bushes and others. On the other side, you have some trees and bushes. We did take the bushes out this year and cut the trees up a little bit higher, and that has improved. Another thing on traffic circles, and this is unpopular, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to change, and I'm not advocating it should, is we have a lighthouse right in the middle. Very few circles throughout the country that I've seen that has anything in the middle so you can see all the way across. I mean, that's iconic. I'm not suggesting we change it, but again, we're going to have to look at all our crosswalks, Rehoboth Avenue and in the future other streets. What do we have leading up to a crosswalk? And yes, you can have the green space, but when you start putting plants in, it does create a problem. And the city and the maintenance plan does a relatively good job on keeping the maintenance up. So they are trimmed and low. I'm not hitting it on anyone, but it's just a focus when we're redoing any streetscapes or anything like that we need to be cognizant of. So down at the traffic circle, we will be looking at the plants on either side and things.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the traffic circle is the biggest risk we have in town right now as far as pedestrians. And we don't want to wait till there's an accident. We want to anticipate, we want to take steps before someone seriously gets hurt, and that could easily, most likely happen in a traffic circle. And I've been looking at that this summer, and the thing I notice is what poor visibility there is. Just awful visibility, whether you're on foot, on a bike, or in a car, because as you approach that, you cannot see the whole intersection where all the people are coming. And part of it is what in the center there, where they tiered up the ground to set the lighthouse on, and they planted grass, and that tall grass, you cannot see across the intersection. And really, with so much traffic, to make that safe, the lighthouse has to be moved. They've got to lower those tiers, and you can still have very nice planting at a level area.
Well, let's be realistic. And for the record, I would say there's zero chance of that lighthouse coming out. However,
You know, people have wanted to do that since they put it up.
It
There's
hasn't
always
always
been
been there.
controversy about the lighthouse.
however,
It hasn't always been there.
the grading around the lighthouse could be lowered significantly to improve the sight lines.
I think they did do some of that. There was some lowering, wasn't there? If I remember correctly.
I think just with the plantings, no, I don't think they've lowered with the concrete and all that. Again, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying when we need to in the future be thinking about that, and they are looking at the
And there will be
grass and the
increased
cutting.
traffic flow, pedestrian traffic flow, coming right between those buildings and around the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center a year from now, when the dock is open. There'll be more pedestrians down there.
And if there's ever a clear space down
Oh,
there, it's
yeah.
gonna be
And
even more.
if clear space is there.
If you want to keep that circle, you have to improve the visibility. And that really, realistically, is redoing the center of that, and just lowering the lighthouse may not be sufficient. And the lighthouse has not always been there. I'm sure there's some other place the city can locate the lighthouse. And you can, but I think with what's being talked about, that seriously needs to be considered. And my question is, if that were to be done, is that something within the city's purview, or is that something the state has to do because they control Rehoboth Avenue? So.
Well, but I think that the improvements and the shrubbery and the plantings are the city. So we've already had all the shrubbery removed here on
We've had some. It's not
the
enough.
east side of the circle, and that was taken down to grass, corrected the problem, and the trees were lifted so you can see under the trees. So I would say it's realistic to consider changing the grade around the lighthouse to be able to see across the circle. And that's more manual labor than anything
But my
really
question
serious.
is, David, is that something the city makes the final decision on? Or is that something the state makes the final decision on because the state
I think
is
that's a city
responsible for
decision.
Rehoboth Avenue?
So let's,
I don't know, answer the question. You
Well,
know
I
more.
can't answer for the
Let's hear
city,
it.
I can't answer for the city or Delta, that's to be the mayor and city manager. Or, I mean, I would sit there and think that we took responsibility, we put the lighthouse, we did the planning, so I would think that it's probably more with this city. But again, that would, I don't know what contracts were signed and who's got that. Again, I'm not trying to skirt the issue. Again, it's not my call. That would be the city manager or the mayor and Del
But
Dot.
where do we need to advocate?
well, I think
And
there's two
again,
levels.
remember, there's been no accident and it's there. I hear what everybody's saying. We don't want to wait till an accident happens.
It's very,
but-
very dangerous. It's
but-
been more dangerous this year than ever before.
I hear the same talk.
What do you mean by that? How,
Well,
the speed
no.
of cars or the?
No, I mean, when there's, I, for the first time, tried to walk across the crosswalk there by the circle. Are you kidding? I was going from the south side of Rehoboth Avenue to the north side. People coming around the circle, they couldn't see me. I had to wait and wait and wait till there was a break in the traffic before I, would try the crosswalk. And finally, I think there was a little break and I had to stop the traffic, but it was very dangerous. When I bike around there, I'm always worried about people coming from along Rehoboth Avenue, whether they're gonna see a bicyclist, will they yield, will they stop, And then I especially notice it when I'm driving, because when I'm in a car and I'm coming, from the west into town, I cannot see what's happening in the circle. I cannot tell if there's someone who wants to come from the Grove Park area. I can't see that. I can't see if there's somebody who's a bicycle who's gotten into the circle from coming from Rehoboth, from the boardwalk area, from the east. And I just realized I cannot see that intersection. And
So let's put on the agenda, improve visibility at the traffic circle. A, regrade lower to improve the sight lines, and B, consider removing the lighthouse.
Yeah. And I think we can have a very nice.
And Walter has a comment, so let's.
Oh, I think it's on there? Okay. Walter Brigham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. You got the presentation that was given at the workshop, and that's what you need to know. And they've already started on some of it. But let's start with the flowers, are taken care of by Spazzato. And Spazzato's he's got to take care of his job. So he doesn't want to aggravate the mayor, the city manager, or the commissioners. But the flowers, for many years now, nobody's wanted to trim the roses down. And they should find another flower to put in there, or to cut them down, or to trim them. The heck with what they look like during the season, get them down. That's one of the main things. And I'd like to back up to the blocks that don't have crosswalks. Y'all, excuse me, that's not nicely said. But y'all need to understand, and it goes out to Baker's Exxon on the highway, and I stopped out there several years ago when they were redoing the highway, and I said, why aren't you putting a crosswalk cut here? And he said, on the other side of the county bank, there is no receiver, there is no cut on the other side. You cannot install a crosswalk cut, federal funds, unless you have a receiving side on the opposite side from where a discharge and a rise up onto the other. So when they did streetscape, and it was well understood apparently at least by the mayor at the time, Mr. Cooper, and we had to beg for the information and get educated, that those islands, for instance, Dogfish, and many of the islands, there is no curb cut at all for people to get off, and then to go to the other side, and you gotta be willing, whether it's on each end, let's say up by Fifth Street, because there's no crosswalk at Fifth Street itself, coming off the state road, there needs to be a curb cut there to go across to the north side of Rehoboth Avenue and to the south side of Rehoboth Avenue to pick up State Road. So just remember when you talk about, and I know he'll tell me, he'll make a sign if I'm wrong, but wherever you install a crosswalk piece, you got to do the same on the other side. So what you have up at the Pearl, you have a crosswalk on the east side by the Pearl, but when you get down to the other side by the Grub, there is no crosswalk there, and you have a lot of people coming across, so they have to walk around the end where the cars are making the left deceleration lane as you come into Rehoboth to go to Lake Avenue. And it needs to have a study by the city's engineer, which they may have, and then it needs to be put into the budget and get built, and it needs to be done with some thought. But go back to the roundabout. One of the problems at the crosswalk on the west side of the roundabout is when you do come around there, and all summer, backed up to the visitor center, we had at least one of the lights was out of service all high season. And they just
On
could
the
not.
overhead lights?
One of the teardrop lights as you come down, let's say Columbia, and make a right to go out of town, it was out all season.
That lamppost was taken down by an automobile accident, as I recall.
And then they waited till they restored the concrete, and then they finally got around to, through a couple different contractors, to get it back up and working. And then also what happened down in that area immediately was Rise Up. When Rise Up started, the contractor from Lewis willingly, we asked him quietly, not through the city, people like me, can you turn the lights back on the parking lot? Because that lit up.
Right.
As you came in across the bridge, it put lights, and the chief, Mr. Sullivan, went down there, and we got pretty good results, and the chief just by nicely asking. So that raised the level. But the lumens that are out put by the lights at the roundabout are not enough. You talk about visibility, it's evening visibility. You have a lot of people in dark clothing, you have homeless, you got everybody moving. But when people don't carry flashlights, the whole roundabout needs to be examined for intensity. Now, the city's working with Delmarva Power to do some lighting work, I believe, on Wilmington and Baltimore. And that's a good project, and it's a win-win for the city. But the flowers need to be cut down now. Don't worry about it. They need to be thought about when they go back in or change them. It only takes one person to get hurt. But the lighting for that area, but as you go up the street in so many of those islands, when a person gets out with a baby carriage or something in the center, they go to the end. There is no way to get back down to grade, all the way up. And that would be at Snyder's also, because at First Street up to Grotto's at the center island, I don't believe there's a curb cut to get down at any point except at the First Street end, but all the way up to, I think, at the turnabout at the Rehoboth Avenue restrooms, I don't even think there's a curb cut there. There's one maybe by Carlton's, but
I think it gets you halfway, but not all the way.
okay, well, but that's the rule. That's the federal, and it's a good rule for people walking. And then again, in the middle of all of it, because of the inherent project and the way it went, I stop often and put my flashers on and tell people, folks, the center is blocked all the way to the ocean. If you're going to take all this stuff to the ocean, you might consider getting to the sidewalk on either end, because they're having to walk around transformers, trees, and all the rest of the stuff. And we're not going to change that. But it's solvable, but it needs to have an attitude that it needs to be fixed.
And I think there at the traffic circle, like if we improve the visibility in the sense of taking things away that interfere with the sight line, plus the lighting, good lighting there, and if we, with the crosswalks, that we stripe them just like the other crosswalks in town. Because I think when you have that reflective, if you have all those crosswalks striped in reflective paint, that as people come in and approach that, they're going to know that this is an area to slow down and to watch for pedestrians.
Are you looking at lights for that part as well, for the circle? I know you mentioned 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but are you looking at the lights for the circle?
No, just because at this time, when I was down there with Del Dot, and again, I don't want to speak for Del Dot at all in engineering, they feel the traffic circle is doing its job. It's slowing traffic down, and we can argue if it's debate or people in or out, but traffic circle is designed to keep the flow moving. and all. It doesn't necessarily, no, but again, you already had a flashing red light. You have the crosswalks on either side. I really think you start putting more signage and things in that area. It's just too much. Your eyes can't sit
You only
there
have
and focus
seconds to
that.
adjust to that information, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
too much,
It's all
then
on the
there's,
right.
then you get nothing.
I don't think signage along the side of the road works very well. Because when you're driving and you're biking,
Oh, I
you're
see.
looking at the pavement.
Right.
And that's why if things are on the pavement, you're going to see those more so than you're going to see signs on the side of the street.
Well, that's where long-term, you're gonna hope for the lights in the street that strobe.
Yeah. In that
Uplight.
location, maybe, although it is another distraction.
And as I recall, we discussed going to higher wattage bulbs in those lights and changing over to LED lights.
That's sort of what Mr. Braham just talked about. The Public Works Director, Kevin Williams, City Manager, is working with DPNL in some different areas and looking at wattages and different types of light bulbs. And I noticed those streets, I know they've talked about on the boardwalk as well as Rehoboth Avenue and things. Where that's at, I do not know.
But they could choose higher wattage bulbs for any of the street lights, right? Like if we wanted just higher watts around the circle, that could happen. That wouldn't necessarily have to go all the way down Rehoboth Avenue.
I'd have to defer to DPNL or Kevin Williams because I'm not sure how.
We've
know.
discussed it in the past, and it's been on the record.
Yes, I know
Looking
they
for
have as
improvements in
far as,
lighting down there.
you know, if they do certain sections one wattage and other, was kind of a question, and that I just don't know about out, but I know that they are looking at all that.
And at our last meeting, Rise Up was yet to open, so
Right.
Yeah. I think
the
maybe,
improvement that their lights generated hadn't occurred yet. Now it's much better.
Clarification, Rehoboth Avenue is City of Rehoboth utility.
There you go.
It is not DPNL.
I tell you, I think why the circle is so critical, it's where the worst pedestrian risk is the fact that cars are building up speed there. Like, and it's speed that kills, and coming toward the circle, the cars are building up speed as they come into town and as they're leaving
I
town.
don't know.
And it's,
I'm not sure that
Can
people
I
are
just
building
make-
up speed to
Yeah,
get around
let
that circle.
Can I just make a comment? I've been here 25 years, and I know that circle was everybody was afraid of it, and I've seen them all over Australia, and I don't like going through them. I agree with what he just said. There hasn't been any accidents, and we all have our doubts with it, but it seems to be working, and was a lot better than what we had before.
well,
I've gotten hit on Rehoboth Avenue on bike. Sorry, I didn't report it. But before the circle, and I got hit on my bike. You know, it
you got
looks
hit in
like
the circle?
right before the circle, and it was for a stupid reason. It's slowing down traffic. It's making people look. I mean, maybe something on visibility, but it's a lot better than what it used to
They're
be.
not.
I mean, I know you don't like it. We're not used to it. We don't have them all over the place.
I like circles.
Yeah, no.
We're not used to it. We don't
Well,
have them all over the place.
let's,
It's not.
if we want to be here till 2 o'clock, which we can't be, we can continue to discuss this. But I think we need to move on.
Well,
It's on-
may I ask another question
Yes.
about the sites? Where are we? The ones that are controlled by lights. Okay. When you are driving down that Rehoboth Avenue and you want to turn right, you may have a green light to turn right. But the walk light is on for the people. So they're walking across while so you have to sit there and wait. Have you ever talked to the state about that, about adjusting that somehow?
We have, and the mayor's asked me to do it, and I spoke with Gene Lawson through TMC and all that, and we haven't got much headway on that. They have checked it out, and they feel that it's working the way it's supposed to. Again, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but yes, we have brought it to their attention.
That's a terrible system.
But you take those free rights when you've got lots of pedestrian
It's
traffic.
that way everywhere in the world. You've got a balancing act between getting the pedestrians across the intersection and keeping the cars moving.
But you could time the lights so that they don't conflict.
Well, there's probably a computer program that would predict that.
I think so.
I'm not sure we have access.
Or I think they'd have to say no right on red. I mean, that's what they do
Well,
at those
generally it
intersections.
says
Yeah, it says
That-
that.
you
when
know.
pedestrians are present, you can't turn, or something to that effect. So you have to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a green light, you still have to yield to the pedestrian. I think that's the normal procedure. You can sit at the table, Walter, if you want.
Walter Birmingham. DelDOT Traffic, TMC, Smyrna, they've been well involved, the chief's done a good job on that. And they have a solution. And let's go out on the highway, when somebody pushes a crosswalk button at the highway, 52 seconds to get across the highway, total. Doesn't matter whether anybody's going through or not, it's got nothing to do with the hawk lights, 52 seconds. And they can do that, and they offered to do that here in town. But when the light changes and makes everybody red and lets the pedestrian cross, it takes away from flow time. And this, hard as it may be to believe, but the lights are synced on Rehoboth Avenue all the way to the highway, all the way through to Church Street. And if you take the time
Yes.
to keep this person stopped and have nobody here and have no right on red, you're gonna not let as much traffic flow. So once the one or two people get by that you can go across, there is a solution. They can do it. It's wired for it. The lights out here, the cameras up on top are video motion detectors. They can see what's happening. But it works. But sometimes you have to be careful once you put it in. I'm not being sarcastic, like a stop sign. You can't take it back out once you get a necessity. And it's important to keep the traffic flowing on the avenue as much as possible. Is that pretty close?
Yes, well said, yes.
Yes, and I agree, because traffic flow and idling cars and pollution created by idling cars, there's a
Well,
big
that's the
dynamic going
complaint
on
we
there
had
as well.
here. We had a citizen come in and complain about the traffic backing up simply because you can't turn right because all the pedestrians are going across. But they go across when it's not a walk light. So- But still, there could be an improvement on those lights. I don't.
So clearly, we're adding plenty of things to talk about in the future down here on number
Yeah.
9. But let's get to shuttle parking locations, because Lydia and the people at the Jolly Trolley have been working on the jitney service. And I was not aware of that until this morning, 9:30. So my goal would be more people, fewer cars.
That's the point of the shuttle, to move people around so
More
they don't
people,
bring their cars.
Fewer
right?
cars. And ultimately, more bike racks, less parking spaces. But that gets into revenue generation, and the city just had a really nice bonus from parking. So where do we, and I'm hoping that Lydia's worked on this, and I'll try to find out as soon as I can. What's available to us, city property, the school, the Little League ball field, where are places that people could park nominally or for free and get into the city? Because there's a lot of comment about 3-hour meters and turnover, and people want to get to the beach, park their car, pay once. So to me, the shuttle service, hopefully provided by Jolly Trolley, would enable those people to park their car in a remote lot and then get into town for less than it would cost them to pay to park all day, conceivably, which would be a benefit to everybody.
David, why would the in-town shuttle duplicate what the DART is doing? The DART's already providing that remote parking.
What are they trying to do? Look at like, can you answer this? Are they trying to?
I haven't heard from them. You know, now, my knowledge of them goes back to what they presented
they-
last year.
When you were running, you talked to me about, are they planning on running the parking lot that we have here differently?
The parking lot
shuttling?
here?
Yeah, the parking lot, running it differently, managing it differently?
Oh, but you're not talking about the Jolly Trolley, you're talking about the parking
Yeah,
lot
well,
here.
he's talking about shuttling people to I guess the beach, right? That's
Yeah.
where everybody goes.
I think it's
Yeah.
a shuttle around town.
The
With
DART
two different things.
system the Jolly Trolley people all could, in theory, coordinate. There's a parking lot back behind Bed Bath & Beyond, Fresh
Yeah,
Market.
right, so,
There's another one up in Lewis.
right.
But those to me tie into shuttle service, Jolly Trolley. The Jolly Trolley ideally is gonna have a loop around the city.
Yeah, that was the plan that was presented last
I-
year, but that was to get people around the
That's
city.
what I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't think
Yeah,
anybody
yeah,
thought
I-
anything about parking on
I
that.
think,
Right, yeah,
really.
right.
I think the purpose of the Jolly Trolley is to go around town and pick up people who are in town or close to
Yeah, that's
town,
what-
so
that's-
they don't have to bring their car, they can leave their cars at home. They leave their cars at home, and we provide a way for them to get into town without bringing their
around town.
cars. So I don't think we have to worry about parking for them. So and so I think it's like, and as far as the shuttle, I would encourage them to have an even broader or circulation than what they proposed last spring. I think the proposal last spring was really limited to within town, okay? And I think if we want to save cars coming into town, it would be great if the shuttle would go down to North Shores and pick up, because the people in North Shores would drive their car into town if they wanted to get into town. So if we had a shuttle down there and pick up those people at North Shores, they wouldn't have to bring their cars into town.
Wasn't it gonna go down there somewhere?
Well, I think maybe it got kicked around, but it wasn't on their route. It wasn't on their route. But see, I think we would encourage them to expand their route, to have even more than what they proposed last spring. And I could see them going down to, like I said, North Shores, through Henlopen Acres, then go down to the Church Street light and go over to Canal Corcoran and
Wow,
Canal
that's quite
Point.
a.
And they could
Depending on when you get on, you might be on there for a while.
Well, I know, it'd be tricky, but I was thinking close by residential areas, that's not too far for the shuttle to go, that they could get there without going on Route 1, and they could pick up those people and bring them into town, so those folks don't bring their cars into town.
David, what, has she said anything? Is she's talking about going outside the city limits?
They're not,
I-
that's my
That's a
I
different
put
thing.
this
I don't know
on
what
here,
they, I don't know what they
I
brought
put this
up.
on here to stimulate thought and conversation. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? But there are many places in the world that you go where you don't even think about driving your car into the town.
Lots of places.
You just don't.
Right.
So I don't want to impact revenue to the city because there are people that are going to drive here regardless. It's not going to impact those people. But if we could develop a pattern of water taxi, walk into town, shuttle areas, jitney service, and do more to get people where they want to be and eliminate a lot of the traffic on Rehoboth Avenue. Because part of what happens here is the stress levels go up. I gotta get into town, I gotta find a parking space. And then people are taking laps around Rehoboth Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. And it's burning up fossil fuel, and it's creating pollution, and it's creating stress. And I talk all the time about relax, you're at the beach. Like, what's so stressful about
It's
being next to the
crowding.
ocean? I don't understand.
It's a crowd.
But, so
But you are talking about getting people in from,
I think you have
Or
to
they
look
even come
at.
up
What she's, I don't know what she, yeah.
I
Is it
look
outside the
at
city?
it as an
Outside the
inner
city.
zone and an outer zone, is,
okay.
again, I wanted to
Which may be two
stimulate,
different things.
stimulate
different routes.
things and get it out. We talk about it, it may go nowhere. But if there's an inner loop and an outer loop, as an example, maybe there's 2 levels and 2 shuttles.
Right.
Depending on, I don't know about DART. I don't know, I've heard repeatedly that it doesn't satisfy the needs of the workers that need to get into the
Because of
city.
hours, right?
And yet, in most countries, again, around the world, public transportation is for the people that don't have an automobile and need to get to work. That's what they do. So if I'm on the Amazon Avenue in Quito, Ecuador, and I raise my hand in the bus stops and I put a quarter in and I get where I'm going.
I don't.
And so there's
I don't think this is aimed at workers, though, the shuttle. I think the shuttle's aimed at tourists and residents to move them around so
No,
they
you
don't.
don't
There's-
live, you don't live right downtown, and you see that.
Yeah, I do.
I live right downtown. I'm one of the few people right on Ocean
I'm
Bluff,
pretty
and
close.
And, I, the employees are the ones that take all the parking spots before 8 o'clock, and I don't know why we have
Yeah.
not, and I don't, they won't take the shuttle bus. They all wanna park here, and they all can do it. I don't know why that we didn't, look at different spots where they could park, creating
that's
a
been
new
talked
spots
about,
and put a
that-
different thing.
So
for
there-
That
them.
is, employee parking
there's-
has been talked about too.
There's that outer zone
Right,
that would be probably
Dover
more
Beach is
focused on workers
Yep.
than
yep, that's,
people coming for a day at the beach.
Walter Brigham, I think maybe you're wasting time, and I'm objective. Because the shuttle, Jolly Trolley shuttle, initial discussion started on October last year. And nobody knew about it till December, January. It finally really came up officially presented in budget sessions, the end result. And you don't know right now that the mayor and city manager have not had detailed instructions about or discussions about exactly what you're talking about. And maybe the question needs to go to the mayor and city manager, what's the status on the shuttle and or equal? Because
They may be
our,
way ahead of
our
it.
Yes.
premise was that it ought to be open to bid to everybody, not just to one person. But you need to know what the administration is doing, that you don't waste your effort.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on.
Well, one other comment on that, we've had people from the Jolly Trolley here, usually almost all the time.
I would say
Why there's nobody today?
absolutely free enterprise.
Yeah.
Jolly Trolley people are the only ones I'm aware of.
Yeah.
If there are other people that would
Technically,
want to do it, absolutely,
It should go out to bid, though. I mean,
absolutely.
I
So,
just hope our committee would fully endorse it and encourage that it be an even larger route than what they proposed last winter and spring.
It was
Just that.
subsidized.
it was,
It was to be
it
subsidized.
had to be.
At 100.
But the proposal was to be subsidized, and that's why it was deemed that it needs to stay within the city limits at the time.
because it was going to be subsidized by the city of
That's true,
Rehoboth Beach.
there was,
Okay.
yes, that was right.
All right,
Ah.
But
so
it did not get approved for that.
we're going to carry this forward.
That's why we didn't get it in last year, then it was up in council.
So one of the things that I
Subsidized.
recommended to the city recently was an hourglass timer, countdown timer,
For what? For just,
for many things, mainly for public citizen comment.
Oh,
But it's also coming into play in our meeting. So let's keep moving. The Merje presentation of the city, from my brief review of their information that they provided, was that it was not really, like bicycles were at the bottom of the list,
yeah, true, it's true. They're coming back today, by the way.
which disturbed me. Because bicycle traffic continues to grow. No pollution, spend money, all good things for the business community, for the city, for the environment. We don't have data from DelDOT, but we know in 2017, there was 100+ thousand bicycle trips. And I'm sure that number's gone way up because I see more and more bicycles.
oh,
Dan,
yeah.
I'm out there as much as possible to see what's going on. But I think that there are weaknesses in that presentation that we have to go through.
It was kind of vague and open when I went to it.
Yeah, so,
David, is it possible that you could be there this afternoon? He's gonna present, and if you.
well, there's possible and there's probable. So possibly, yes, probably, maybe.
You may be out on your bike.
Who's making?
No, I have-
The guy from Merge is coming back.
I have
Ah.
a meeting in Lewis that I have to get to.
And I
12:15,
can't remember
so-
exactly where it is on the agenda.
Those of us who did go to the Merge meetings, we
Yes.
did advocate for bike signs. We did bring that up, and these are professionals that, there's this whole,
There's a lot of stuff on there.
well, these are professionals who think about this from an international and national level of how to do road signage, okay? And there's a hierarchy, and they're focusing on the top of the hierarchy as far as gateway entry into the city information, parking, things like that. And so bike signs are real low on their priority list. And so we did advocate, but it was sort of like, no, that the city could figure that out once the merge came in with their proposal for the major stuff. And that's sort of where that was.
So we've all been on hold, waiting for merge. Now merge has emerged.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's on the surface, it's public information. We should look at it in more detail as relates to pedestrian safety, cyclist safety.
Yeah, and see, and I think it all ought to be coordinated before they put up.
To me, all those things come together.
I agree.
He just told us, the meeting, he pretty much just told us what they've done other places and what.
Well, except
There
that they
was,
have.
there was nothing in concrete when he made
Yeah,
it.
well, now it's very concrete and it's on like a fast track.
So,
Okay.
And it's more costly, like, you know, it's
But
almost like.
my concern is having the right signs that meet the right goals, because the parking committee is also addressing changing regulations a little bit. And before all the parking signs go in, we need to know what regulations we're gonna adopt so that the signs can match that, because that's one of the things that went wrong this year, is that the signage for like the 3 hour was not well marked, and there were other complaints about signage. And the decision about the parking garage is largely dependent on people knowing that this lot is here and whether or not they're gonna use it or not. Because if this lot doesn't get used, then as a
Around our
surface lot,
streets.
then there's no, is there a rationale for a garage? But in order to know whether it's gonna be used to its maximum extent, if the signage has to be there to send people to it.
access is awkward.
Yeah.
Again, streetscape, the median, the firehouse.
Right.
There's not a easy
Right,
left
that's right, 'cause
turn
I turned
Right.
left into.
off
the
Rehoboth
sign.
Avenue.
Yes.
There is
So-
actually.
Well, you have to turn across, it doesn't look obvious. I do it all the time because that's how I get into the City Hall parking lot now. But if you were a visitor coming to town, it doesn't look like you're supposed to be able to do that.
Right,
No.
right.
And
But-
you do
but-
kind of come back a little bit.
Right,
yeah.
You're
but the
driving.
space is there, but if it were marked, it would not be bad for people.
I believe that you would be violating the law by driving against traffic.
Yes.
diagonally.
Right, yes.
You would.
So,
Shouldn't admit that in a recording.
You know, parking used to be part of this committee. And it would be a lot better if we were working together with the parking committee.
well, they have an agenda, the boardwalk.
But they have a different agenda with the park, but, you know, when I first joined this committee, that's when the report came from Linda Kaufman.
Right, oh, okay.
That
Yeah,
big
yeah.
study that she did about the
Yeah,
parking
okay,
garage.
yeah. Well, it's actually, then there's 3 committees, because in addition to this one, there's parking advisory, which is ongoing, and then there's the parking garage task force, which is a special one just to talk about the garage. So I'm trying to keep up with all of them. There's 3 different
I'm-
ones now.
Maybe we should have a current meeting. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I'm-
interesting, yeah.
The parking garage is I think there's probably efficiencies to be gained just from the existing space in the city that would be almost free compared to $10 million. But again, if you're able to develop a pattern of use of public transportation and shuttle lots and services, then all that becomes secondary.
Mhm.
It depends upon the way things evolve.
And
But-
if the shuttle were a private-public partnership and the city made money off the shuttle, that would compensate for any parking revenues they might get.
I still think no matter what happens in that area, there's still gonna be people that are gonna drive here and park.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, and we want to create room
And
for
I'm
them,
not
that's
sure that would impact the parking revenue so much as be able to bring more people here, because the fear of the parking space and the expense of the parking space would no longer exist.
Yes, exactly.
Get on the shuttle, get off where you wanna get off, go to the bandstand.
But-
Be
And
wonderful.
I think it would be wonderful, and that's what I'm used to in other parts of the world, but this is the city of Rehoboth Beach, 1.19 square miles, and we've got to stay focused on what we can do here. So if those things come into play, I'd like it to see the benefit the merchants, the
Sure.
restaurateurs, et cetera. It's,
And the employee
It's all
parking
good
is
because we
another
have-
issue. There's another big, that would free up how many, a couple hundred spaces right there.
The thing with the employees, it's time. It's like here, they've had the shuttle, but that means they have to go early. And so it's taking more time for them to coordinate with public transportation.
Well,
And
I
that's
think
why
that's part of the education that I don't think has occurred
Right.
as to the value of a parking space to a business. You're taking up a parking space that's worth X dollars to the merchants over this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 square block area. There's never been a number put on the revenue generation of a parking space. And yet it exists. And the employees take away from the revenue from the very businesses that they're serving. It's a little weird.
Well, you know, right now, the Chamber of Commerce has a questionnaire out to the businesses. Have you heard anything about that? The
Now,
results?
they're gonna talk about it at the next parking advisory meeting. I don't know when that's gonna be, but yeah, they are getting a survey of a number.
I don't know if it was this week or next week,
I don't remember. I don't think it's been scheduled.
but it'll be
I think
interesting to
it's
see what the
rescheduled.
merchants have to say about
Yeah,
parking.
absolutely, yeah.
Well,
That's
very
another piece.
interesting.
That's another
Yeah.
valuable piece of it, yeah.
Okay, so we've got all kinds of things we've discussed now. I'm on the back of my page. So we need to think about, okay, what's at the top and work our way down for when we get together again.
And so you're trying to do a priority list for the next meeting?
I think we should, because the clock is ticking
I
down.
really think the number, I don't wanna overshoot you.
No, go,
The number one thing should be what we all brought up at the beginning of the meeting is what's the purpose of this group and where do we fit in on this priority?
yes.
That really needs to be
The
done.
responsibilities of the committee and the sequence of events as relate to the mayor, the city manager, chief of police, director of public works, and the group of commissioners.
I think we'd all like to know that.
Right.
Spreadsheet, flow chart,
Yeah, what's our role?
where,
If they're just gonna go ahead and do
Organization chart.
whatever they want, I mean, that's fine, we should know that, but.
well, and that goes back to what I said earlier, no surprises. We would like to be involved and know what's going on.
Right.
that's
And
number
in
one.
many cases, that level of involvement could be a 30-second email.
Does anybody
1 minute.
disagree with that should be the number one priority?
I totally agree.
I agree.
Because our purpose is what we're all giving up our time for.
Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Dan.
Well, I think it's the number one thing we should bring up and get to be done before we have the next meeting, or at least have someone tell us what they're gonna
It
do.
was number 2 on my list. I'm happy to move it to number 1. So let's go for number 1 as where do we fit in with the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do we get that answer?
You're a councilman.
I'm only one, you know.
There's 5 places to ask. Ann might have some knowledge of, based on her years of experience here, but she's just,
I'm just here to observe.
okay, so that's
number
number 1. What's number 2?
Pedestrian safety, it seems like.
Pedestrian safety, but it's just, should it be focused specifically on the circle where we feel as though there's more of a need? Or should it be pedestrian safety and then the circle number 1 and number 2, number 3?
My thought
Pedestrian
is,
safety and then underneath pedestrian safety would be the circle. And
That's
then,
what she seems to think, but I think this, I know no one is saying this, but I think the circle did it's a lot safer up there as far as pedestrians than when we didn't have the circle before, but I'm the only one that's saying it.
it's quite clear that there's been a lot done relative to pedestrian safety and crosswalk renewal.
Right.
There's activity.
Yes, there's actually,
So-
and more activity to come.
well, the city's already moving on
Yeah,
that, on
Yeah.
Rehoboth Avenue, but they're not focusing on the circle, so.
So let's-
And I think the circle does great moving traffic. It's just, there's gonna be more and more pedestrian stuff there.
But
And we need to make it safer
maybe
there.
they'll take over the cars.
Good?
Maybe there'll be more pedestrians and cars.
So-
We've deferred to the boardwalk committee on walking your bike in front of Henlopen
Yeah.
Hotel.
Saw that they're taking that.
So
up.
they're,
Yeah.
and,
Are there,
and
before you leave pedestrian safety, are there
Yes.
any other, besides Rehoboth Avenue, are there any other things that, I've heard people mention, like Second Street, King Charles, this kind of stuff.
well,
Um,
one of the things that we were told we were gonna get were stripes across King Charles. Right now, they exist at Hickman
Yeah,
and only Hickman. The other streets are blank. But we were told we were gonna get striped crossings across King Charles on the north side of every intersection. Because there's a significant amount of traffic, pedestrian traffic, going to and from the beach.
right, yeah, yeah.
And it's a very wide street. The pedestrians are exposed for a long period of time. And they're also carrying a lot of stuff.
Right.
Because it's not really convenient to go down any of those streets and drop things off and get back out. Particularly if you've already found a parking space, you don't wanna pass it up.
Right, yep.
So that was one of the things that we were told would happen last year that did not, was striping on King Charles.
Okay.
Crosswalk striping on King Charles. So that was one of the things on my list. We also talked about Surf Avenue, and
Yeah.
Yes, that was at that, this is in those
I
minutes.
feel as though that needs to be brought back up again. And
Yep.
Walter brought up a good point that if parking were to be eliminated along there in order to accommodate more pedestrian and bicycle traffic, there still would need to be drop-off zones for people to get to the beach access points. But Chief Banks is not here now, but I know that that was one of the areas of concern to him when I met with him about Lake and Rehoboth. He had the concern about Surf Avenue and the lighting at the circle. So I think Surf Avenue needs to get back on the agenda.
Okay, good. And what, we talked about this State Road. And
State Road is another one that
Yeah,
Kathy gave me some information that leads me to believe that there is a way to stripe a crosswalk even if there's not an ADA ramp
Really?
on one side.
that would be great.
Yeah, she's got a note here
That
from
would
one
be
of the
great.
Del Dot people.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, that
So-
would be a real breakthrough.
That would.
Well,
Yeah.
that would be, because my understanding previously was that federal law trumped
Yep.
everything.
Yes, I had heard that.
And now apparently she's been given information from a person at Del Dot that there is a way to accomplish it.
Oh, that would really be great. Yeah, can we put that on the list of next time? then?
So,
would
so
really be
that should be on there. The intersection, particularly that's important to me, is where we've tried to get the bicycles to come across the
Yep.
canal, turn right on Canal, and
Yep.
continue across Hickman. That's also, so that's a major flow point.
great. Right.
Canal
Exactly.
Street at Hickman across, so we would put that, I'd like to see that on the agenda.
Yeah, definitely.
So Canal at State, crosswalk. And if that information is correct as relates to ADA compliance and still being able to do the stripes, then that could relate to other places as well.
Okay. Yeah, I could see one up at Munson too, just because there's not anything between there and up at Rehoboth Avenue, but yeah, that's great.
Do you wanna put anything on the agenda for next time about this merge proposal, or somebody presenting?
Well, we
it
need to,
for us?
I did not have enough time. I was away. I did not have enough time to review it, so I'd like all of us to just leaf through it.
And well, there may be, I don't know if the information today is gonna be, the diagrams I saw looked the same as what was presented last month, but still, the most recent,
So that they have proposals for
and
everything?
there's drawings and everything, yes.
With
It's on-
specifics
it's-
is what you're saying?
Yes,
So we should be able to can we put on the agenda that we be allowed to review that?
oh,
at least when
absolutely,
it comes
yeah,
to
and
the
they'll
next
be,
meeting?
they're coming in this afternoon, and the charts are already attached to the agenda, so they're,
So I know it was a presentation last time, but they actually know what they're gonna be doing for the city and giving us something?
they've got there's a proposal for what the signs will look like, where they're going, how much they cost.
What's gonna be on them? that's my question.
Pretty much, I think.
Can we get
Is that
copies
your
of
rec-
those agendas if
They're-
we're not going to the meeting?
Well, they're attached.
Yeah, it's on the city website.
It's on the portal attached
Yeah.
to today's agenda.
The Civic Web is all the information, the videos.
Oh, the
everything.
web.
Oh, yeah, Civic Web, yep, it's all there.
Civic
I
Web
should
is
use
is
my computer
fabulous.
more.
No, the Civic
Yeah, we
Web is really impressive. You can get the agendas, the minutes, the video.
Now you're talking about the city.
Yes.
Okay.
You can send out a
It's
link if
really-
you wanted
it's
to-
really
to
good.
the- to where it is
Thank
on
you.
there.
Once you get there. or
What
figure
I
out-
was hoping for was to get the merged PowerPoint. That would be
Well, yeah, that's on
ideal.
there, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, that's on there, right? Yeah.
Walter's smiling. Maybe he knows it's there.
I have the PowerPoint yet.
On this
Is the one from last time on there? Yeah, but then, so he might have a newer one today, is what you're saying. Okay, well then after the fact, there would probably be the PowerPoint from today, but there is,
Should be on.
but yeah, they just presented on, it's like September 20th, so that one's recent. But today's might be more recent.
Okay, and then we do want to make it known that there are seats available at the table.
Yeah, right.
So
Yes.
Susan's got Mark that's interested. I'm going to follow up on Bruce Kaufman. So citizens, it would be ideal to have somebody from each part of town. That would be
That would
really
be great.
nice.
Yeah, and do you have a maximum number in mind, or are you thinking that you just want to be open to more
Well,
people
I'm-
coming in, or what?
I don't know if there's a limit.
There is no, it's a
There's no limit.
discretion. No, there's no limit.
So the more the
Our
merrier.
tree group, for instance,
It's-
has 10 people. Wow. Yeah.
People that are willing to give their time for the good of the city is great. The more the merrier. Because as I said in the past, for enthusiastic amateurs, we still have to defer to the professionals, which is part of what we're going to learn about in this flow chart.
Right. So, I mean, should we encourage them to put out a press release for this, like they did? for the
Absolutely.
environmental?
Absolutely. I think it's good to let people know that they have a chance to be
I
involved.
mean, actually, somebody stood up, I think, at the last meeting and suggested that there be a press release for all the committees. Now it's kind of, it may be a little too late because we're voting on most of them, but in the future, that instead of being a press release for one, that at the start of every season, which is, for this is the fall, that there was a press release basically for all, to just alert people to
So
the
we're
existence
down,
of all.
we're at the proverbial Rehoboth Beach, 3 minutes.
Okay.
3 minutes. Isn't that citizen comment limited to 3 minutes? Okay, so we need to schedule our next meeting, and preferably we would do that before the next commissioners meeting so we can get anybody that's interested in joining to be approved.
You mean after the next?
After,
Well, because
they would be approved at the meeting and then we could have our meeting after. So the next commissioners meeting is
November the 15th?
15th.
Yeah.
So could we do it the 22nd? Or is that too close to Thanksgiving? Should we do it in December? Maybe Monday, December 2nd? In the morning?
That the workshop, Ann? Or is it workshop the 9th? Workshop actually is probably the 9th. If the,
Workshop's on the 9th.
okay.
So how about Monday, December 2nd or Friday, December 6th?
November
I
22nd
might
or
be out
the,
of town, but we'll see.
You're
Or
not
the
going to be in New Zealand again, are you?
I am going to be.
oh,
It kills me. And he can play the trombone.
And trumpet and piano.
Wow.
well, November 22nd, that's a week before Thanksgiving.
That's okay too.
Yeah, why don't we, the sooner the better. I think in a way, there's a lot of issues.
Get new members that quick?
Well, they would be approved at the meeting on the 15th. So, I mean, is the 20th at all a possibility?
That's a
Or-
Wednesday.
Not for me.
Okay.
I have Barry Rudolph on the 20th. That's my dentist.
Oh. Didn't think I knew him.
You'd like to. He's a perfectionist. He's
Is
really
he?
good.
I have a perfectionist. So you're saying the 20th?
22nd?
22nd, Friday, we've usually met on Friday, so Friday the 22nd.
So 10:30, Friday the
Yeah.
22nd, is that good? That's better in terms of you leaving?
Oh, no, I'm leaving soon.
Well, then we need more people. Okay, so Ann, can we shoot for 10:30 on the
And how long you
22nd
gonna
of
be gone?
November, please?
Hopefully 2 months.
It looks like the calendar's clear.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
nothing, I don't see anything.
So let's shoot for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Walter,
have two
do you
pot-
have anything else, Walter? We got 1 minute left. Okay,
Public comment.
thank you. And there are spaces on the committee if you'd like to increase your level of involvement.
He's talking to you, Walter.
Okay,
And on the priorities of things I didn't hear you mention the shuttle. Are you putting that on there? That
we can keep it on the list. Put it at the bottom.
Well,
Because I think that's going to depend on what I learned from Lydia. So let's put it on there and hopefully we'll have it.
So
Maybe
that's
we can
okay.
ask Lydia to speak to us
Okay,
on the
yeah, that'd be good.
22nd.
That'd be
Oh.
great.
Yeah, she's usually come to the meetings, that's what I can't figure out.
She doesn't come to all of those.
She
She's been
came
to
to most
some.
of them last year.
Okay, so do we have to have a motion to adjourn, is that?
Perhaps.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Good
thank
God.
you.
Good.
You did it.
These aren't gonna be the